Hello and welcome into the Cubs on Deck podcast. I'm one of your hosts. My name is Greg Huss, and today I am joined by Myrtle Beach Pelicans broadcaster Sam Weiderhaft. Sam, thanks for joining yet again on the show.
Of course, Greg, a little different circumstances this time around. I get to be on the road with the team for the first time, so we're in the hotel room. But yeah, dude, super excited to talk Cubs prospects once again.
Yeah, it's your first trip with the Myrtle Beach Pelicans. You're traveling to the Down East Wood Ducks is where you're playing this week. Fingers crossed that weather holds up so you can be on the road. But it's kind of we were talking earlier. It's kind of perfect because there is no MILB TV stream for Down East, so you get to be there calling the game, which is really nice. It's gonna be fun to hear you on the radio for sure.
Yeah, we get a broadcast of it. I'm going to try and go live on Facebook for at least a few innings of the first game and kind of see how that goes to at least get something. But yeah, it's a new experience. I've never been here before. I've been doing this with the Pelicans for 4 years now, but I've never been on a full week-long road trip. So getting that whole experience is going to be awesome. And yeah, like you said, weather permitting. There's obviously the Hurricane Debbie going on in the area, so we'll see what goes on with that. But it'll be a time. It'll be memorable, that's for sure.
So I've got you on here today because my first thought was the birds are hot, right? Like the birds have been playing real well recently. So get you on to talk a little bit about what's going right for the Myrtle Beach Pelicans. We'll dig into some specific players throughout this episode. But before we do any of that, we're going to actually talk about the Iowa Cubs because word came out from the Des Moines Register. Our friend of the podcast, Tommy Birch, reported a couple days ago. We're recording this on actually. Let me preface this by saying we're recording this on Monday night. This is Monday night, and if you guys are listening to this, some more promotions throughout the system may have come out. They may have not. We don't know. We're coming off of the trade deadline. It was kind of weird last week where the trade deadline hit, but players were already at their current affiliates, so they couldn't really shift around in the way that we kind of would have hoped they would. So this is the first week post trade deadline, really, for minor league baseball, and so we're going to see some shifting. We got a report from Tommy Birch at the Des Moines Register that Matt Shaw, James Triantos, and Kevin Alcantara are all being promoted up from AA Tennessee up to AAA Iowa, which is something we've been waiting on for really Matt Shaw specifically recently. Kevin Alcantara has been hot. James Triantos has been good the entire season long for AA. I want to get your thoughts on you got to see James Triantos and Kevin Alcantara play at Myrtle Beach a couple of years ago, and it's about time. It feels like I'm excited to see these guys in AAA baseball. They're just one step away from the major leagues now.
Looking back on that 2022 Pelicans team, it was just full of absolute studs. You had PCA, Alcantara, Triantos. On the pitching staff was Luke Little and Porter Hodge. Those two are big leaguers now, and Triantos and Alcantara are knocking on the door. And you could tell with those two guys, they were special. Alcantara had a great deal of power, but still had to fill out a little bit with his frame, and now he's doing that and moving up in the levels. And then Triantos is such a young kid, was so disciplined at the plate and put together a really strong season, played over 100 games, hit over 270 at single A with us. So just to see those guys rise through the system and see the success they've had, I think has been really cool. And, it's definitely well-deserved. We didn't have Matt Shaw come through here. He went right up to high A, but, I think it's really cool to have that trio of guys knocking on the doorstep of the majors and, really fulfilling their true potential, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they're like I said, they're a step away at this point. All very well-deserved promotions. Like these are not guys that are just because they're top 5 prospects, top 10 prospect in the organization, they're getting that bump. Like they earned it in terms of the numbers they put up as well. I tweeted out as soon as the news dropped from Tommy that at this point, even though Cade Horton is on the IL in Iowa, the Cubs have 6 of the 7 top prospects in the organization, all in AAA Iowa. Right? You got Cade Horton, Owen Casey, Matt Shaw, Moises Ballesteros, and now Triantos and Kevin Alcantara as well. You can throw Jefferson Rojas into that mix of top 7 prospects, all top 100 prospects in all of baseball. I think we talked about it a little bit on last week's show, I believe, where it's like I don't know that I've seen a minor league team that stacked in terms of top 100 prospects on one roster. Like that's a ton of talent on one team.
I tell you what, man, Alex Cohen is having a heck of a year. I mean, he calls the major league games and then he gets to go and see the next major league team in AAA. It's awesome to see that team kind of get put together. But it's great. It's a lot of talent. And I think, a few years ago, back when these guys were back in Myrtle, we kept hearing that term of the next great Cubs team. And that is starting to come to fruition a little bit. Those guys are starting to get called up, and we see the success that, Owen Casey's having in AAA, and now these new guys coming up to it. It's really exciting stuff, especially when you've seen them from, the single A level and now rising all the way up.
Yeah, you're right. You said that was 21 where these guys were in Myrtle, right?
2022. Yeah.
I mean, it's right where like you got 2022. It was like the next great Cubs team is down in Myrtle Beach, right? And then they kind of split up and move different directions when they were when they should have been in South Bend, right? Somewhere in South Bend, somewhere higher up. It's kind of scattered throughout. But then most of them were in AA Tennessee to start off this year, right? Like we talked before the season about how strong the Tennessee roster was coming into the season. And now they're all in Iowa together. Like they've progressed together. They've gone about it in different ways. You got Porter Hodge and Luke Little already in Chicago, right? You have Pete Crow Armstrong already in Chicago. So it's not exactly the same pace, but like generally speaking, now you're the majors, now you're in AAA. Like they're all right there, ready to roll.
And getting those guys to bond together is a big thing too, right? And get them used to how each other plays and acts and stuff like that. But what's cool about Triantos and Alcantara is when those guys were in Myrtle, they were like best friends, which you'd think maybe there's a language barrier. No, it was like they were best friends. Like Triantos would drive Alcantara places. They went to dinner together a few times. They would show up to the stadium together. Like they have a great bond. So the fact that they're getting that rise to AAA now together is just super cool.
It's a serious bromance between Triantos and Kevin. There was a video. What was it? I think that the Smokies must have posted, or maybe Brad posted it on Twitter. Somebody posted it on Twitter. I saw this video on Twitter where it was like a hug cam in Tennessee. Like they were doing like a hug cam, and they got Triantos and Alcantara in the dugout, and they like hugged in the dugout on like the jumbotron. I was like, that makes sense now. They're BFFs. It's true.
No, they are. It's awesome, man.
All right. I want to, before we move on from here, I want to read off. I kind of listed off what we could potentially see come Tuesday night in terms of a lineup in Iowa, because this lineup is. I had a lot of responses like, "Oh, that lineup could be the White Sox," and I don't know, man. Maybe. So imagine this: we got James Triantos leading off, playing second base. You got Owen Casey, who's been batting in the 2-hole quite a bit. He's actually been leading off some, but let's put Owen Casey in the 2-hole, playing right field. You got Moises Ballesteros batting 3-hole and catching. He's been obviously terrific. Let's throw in a little bit of thump from some major league experience in Trace Thompson DHing in the 4-hole, and then you follow it up by Matt Shaw at third base, Kevin Alcantara in center field. Then you got Miles Mastrobuoni, who's been terrific during his time in Iowa the past couple of years or so, playing shortstop. You got Chase Strumpf at first base, and you got Darius Hill in left field. If you got Chase Strumpf, who's been hot recently, batting in the 8-hole, that's a pretty good lineup. It's a fun prospect-filled lineup, which you don't always get in AAA Iowa, right? Like you don't always get those like prospect-laden lineups. And man, this lineup in Iowa is going to be fun to watch. That's for sure.
Yeah, you see teams do it like different ways. Like me growing up an Angels fan, I still follow the Angels system, and it seems like AA is their big prospect-heavy team because they're always calling guys up from AA.
Yeah.
But yeah, to see like this group at AAA now, where you're facing a weird mix, right? You're facing prospects, but you're also facing guys that are up and down. You're facing MLB veterans that are still looking for a shot, like Joey Votto's playing in AAA right now. So to get experience against those kind of guys, I think is really important. And, hopefully you see Alcantara, Triantos, and Shaw just continue to develop and, make that next step.
Let's go from guys that have been in the system a while to a guy that had just got into a couple games down in Arizona. I know Rich Biesterfeld was posting some pictures of Cam Smith, first-round draft pick Cam Smith. He has not been assigned anywhere, but with him getting in some games at down in Arizona, it's only a matter of time, whether it's this week, next week, the week after that. It's coming up sometime this season where he'll get a taste of some full season affiliate action, whether it's in Myrtle or in South Bend. I don't think that Cam Smith is going to make it up to AA Tennessee in the way that Matt Shaw did. Let's not put those expectations on Cam Smith. But I think it's exciting to kind of look at Cam Smith and project him somewhere. And like, if we're looking at Myrtle Beach in theory and looking at what he can do for that Myrtle Beach lineup, like that's an exciting first-round pick to potentially put in a lineup in Myrtle Beach, man, that you'll get to call. That's fun.
And since I've been here, we've never had a first-rounder come, after just being drafted, right? We got Ed Howard, but that was after the 2020 draft, and that was the 2021 season. We got Cade Horton in the 2023 season, but that was after the 2022 draft. So we haven't had like a mid-season first-rounder come to Myrtle Beach. So him coming here would be extremely exciting and would really boost this infield, I think. I mean, it's an infield that's gotten better throughout the season. But adding a guy like that just has so much physicality, and we know the numbers that he had at Florida State and what he was able to do there, would just be awesome. And getting to see him make his first step in the Cubs organization with Myrtle Beach would be really cool. So, waiting on that call, seeing if he's going to be here, but that would be a really exciting thing that would just bolster this Pelicans lineup that continues to improve and continues to get better. And now we're starting to see it in the win-loss column. And he'd be a big part of a second half surge.
Yeah, I mean, in looking at the third base position, whether it's in Myrtle or in South Bend, like he can slot it into the third base position and do just fine, right? I don't think that you're gonna have to kind of make the lineup work in a certain way. Like he's your first round pick, he is your third baseman. Like he just slides in the lineup pretty smoothly, wherever he gets assigned. I think it's gonna be fun to watch. You're right. The physicality is gonna stand out at Myrtle Beach, right? You have a lot of like teenagers, a lot of guys that are still building on their body, right? You talked about Kevin Alcantara a couple of years ago. The lineup is kind of filled with those guys right now in terms of like there's a lot of talent there, but they still got to get a little bit stronger. Cam Smith's already a strong dude, man. Like he's already a big guy. I think that he'll stand out quite a bit on a roster in Myrtle Beach.
No doubt about it. And I think what's interesting is that, sometimes you get college guys that get to the professional game in single A and, they struggle, right? And they have to go through a lot of adjustments because it's such a different game from high level college baseball to professional baseball in single A. We've had guys this year that have struggled with the transition. I don't think Cam is going to do that at all. I think he's, a really talented player from what I've seen and the numbers that he put up. But, I think definitely seeing him at single A and seeing the adjustments that he has to make in order to face, elevated pitching and more talented pitching at this level, will certainly be interesting to follow. So, it would be great. I think it'd be awesome. A super fun storyline if he comes to Myrtle Beach. I don't know, how long he'd be here. I guess it depends on the success. But, he'd be an awesome story, and we're definitely hoping for it.
I think you savor any amount of time if you get him down there in Myrtle Beach. I think you savor any amount of time you can get with Cam Smith, just because if he does get assigned there, I don't know how long he'll be there with you guys.
I've been told that so many times over the past 4 years. Man, you gotta savor your time with so and so. It's like I know it's tough being at single A because they get so good and they move up. That's just kind of how it goes. But no, that third base spot this year has kind of been a little bit of a revolving door. At least as of late, we've had Passiola play there. We've had Preciado play there. We'll talk about him, but Eriandys Ramon has been over there as of late. Cristian Olivo has been at third base. So there's been a lot of guys that have gotten time over at third. And maybe with the addition of Cam Smith, maybe he kind of makes that more, solidified.
And it'd be nice having a 3-hole hitter manning third base every single day. Like that would be an every single day thing for Cam Smith. So We'll keep an eye on that. That'll be exciting to keep an eye on for sure. Let's move to the current roster, the current team for the Myrtle Beach Pelicans, because I mentioned it before, man. Like, the Birds are hot. You guys went on a heck of a win streak. What was it? 8-game win streak.
Yeah.
So 8-game win streak. You won 10 out of 11 games. You lost a couple towards the end of this past series, but the Pelicans are playing well. What's been going well for this team when you're looking at it from a general perspective?
I mean, they're just putting it all together, and you win a few games in a row, and there's just, I've spent a lot of time with our manager, Buddy Bailey, over the past week and a half, and he keeps telling me, there's just a belief. Once you win 2 or 3 games in a row, your guys start to believe, we're a good team, and that's what's happened with us. I mean, we've not only won that, had that 8-game winning streak, but also 15 wins in the last 19 games, coming off of an 8-game losing streak where nothing was going right. But now it's just been, we've definitely had a big addition of talent. That's been huge. But the guys are just putting it together. And in the beginning of the year, it was just kind of a weird mix of guys that, were inexperienced, hadn't played single A before, with guys that are repeating Myrtle Beach for 2 or 3 years maybe. And, it's tough to kind of figure out that dynamic. But now, the clubhouse is great. The energy is great. And, hitters are being more selective with pitches. The pitchers are really dialing it in. The pitching staff from the beginning of the season has improved immensely to where we're at now. And it's been really fun to watch, especially when you lose 8 straight, you're in last place in the second half, and it's like you can throw in the towel right there. But, our guys have a great attitude, and the coaching staff has really whipped them into shape. And, it's been a really awesome just turnaround to be able to see these guys put together the wins they have.
I think you nailed it. Like the roster is so strange to look at. Early on in the year, still a little bit now, but especially early in the year, we're like, you're right. You had guys repeating the level for multiple seasons. You had guys that had been up to South Bend and were back down to Myrtle Beach. You had former college pitchers. You had international free agent signings that were getting their first taste of full season ball. Like such a weird mix. I think, I always go back to this, but the losing short season baseball, right? Losing what was for the Cubs, the Eugene Emeralds, it has changed the way we look at low A, at single A in Myrtle Beach. It's a different structure to the roster entirely. Where like a lot of these guys that started off the year, they may have been held back at extended spring training and then gone to Eugene to finish off the year in Eugene. But instead, they're back to they're starting in Myrtle Beach. They may be a little overwhelmed at first, but they kind of get it figured out. We're going to talk about Carter Trice later. I think that he's a great example of a guy who was struggling earlier in the year and then really figured it out towards the end here. Just a weird mix of players, that's for sure. But you're right, they have really figured it out. You mentioned before Eriandys Ramon, and I think that's the first guy I want to talk about because I think that given the fact that he's only played four games for you guys, there's been a lot of hype surrounding Eriandys Ramon. He was really good down in Arizona this season to start off. And when he got promoted, everybody's really excited. He's 21 years old at this point. So he was a little bit older to be down in Arizona, but he looks really good. He's playing third base, he's playing infield, can play some short, can play some second. He's got the body of a guy that like you really think he can take off when he gets up to South Bend, Tennessee, and continues to climb the ladder.
Yeah, I think it is awesome how he's played 4 games, and we're already talking about him on the podcast. Like that's how much of an impact he's made already. But it's a really interesting case with Eriandys because, again, I don't really know him too well because he's only been here for like 2 weeks. But he was signed out of Cuba pretty late last year and like was thrown right into the DSL and didn't hit very well because there was not a lot of adjusting at all because he was signed and then it's like, all right, go play some games. Yeah, right. And, just didn't really have that time to kind of settle in. But yeah, when we got him, I look at his ACL numbers and he was just off the charts. And, being a switch hitter, third baseman with an incredible arm. And what we saw from him in our last home series, like 3 doubles, 2 triples, made some really good plays at third base. I was stunned. I couldn't believe that this guy was, playing single A baseball and nobody had really heard of him yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, with being that late signing, he got over from Cuba, I think in 2022. So a little bit late on the development, but when we got him, I was getting texted from some of my friends in Arizona saying like, this guy's the real deal. And he's going to be fun to watch. So hasn't played the past week. Hopefully he gets healthy and can get back on the field once again. But he has made such a big impact and is already 4 games in, like, one of my most favorite players to watch this year.
I mean, he's 8 for 16 in his start in Myrtle Beach. His numbers, like we mentioned in Arizona, were insane. I think this is probably our first mention of Eriandys Ramon on this podcast. In Arizona, he batted .340 with a .368 OBP. He slugged .566. He had 4 homers, 12 doubles, 6 triples. Like he kind of does a little bit of everything, and he's been terrific since he's been called up to Myrtle Beach. I'm really excited to see him continue to get like consistent at bats for the rest of the season in Myrtle Beach. I don't think that he'll get called up to South Bend this year, and I think that's perfect. Like I would love to just see him ride things out the rest of the year in Myrtle Beach. And if he performs well enough, I think he might not get assigned to Myrtle Beach to start off the 2025 season. I think he might get kicked up right away to South Bend to start his age 22 season, and that'll be really fun.
Yeah, I think that'll be right too, especially with the way that he's playing right now. But obviously has the hit tool from what we've seen, and sometimes it's different because you get a new guy and the pitchers have no data on him, so they don't know what to throw him, and sometimes hitters are kind of in a better spot that way. But I think he's going to be just fine as the season goes on and we get deeper into the second half. But what really impressed me was he made a few throws over at third where it was just like zipped right off the arm. And I think that was probably his most impressive quality that I've seen so far. It's just his fielding ability at third base. But really, really excited to see what else he can do throughout the season.
Really excited to see how far he bumps up my prospect list in the offseason. That's gonna be fun.
That's what we're all waiting on, Greg.
That's what everybody's waiting on. Let's go from Eriandys Ramon, a guy that's kind of unfamiliar to a lot of us, to a guy that is very familiar to a lot of us, and that's Cristian Hernandez. I had you on, I think it was episode 60 or 61. It was back in May. Had you on, and we talked a lot about Cristian Hernandez and the adjustments that he's made to the plate. He's still down in Myrtle. I think back then when we talked, we were like, he may not be there much longer. He's still down in Myrtle, but he's still been just kind of being a really consistent hitter over the course of this entire season. And I think that he's continued to grow as a hitter, not only from last year to this year, but throughout this season, which I think it's important to continue to grow that way as the season is wearing on.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it. Like the consistency, I think has been the biggest thing with me. Is he's continued to hit at a high level throughout this year. Whereas last year he started off pretty well and then dipped off tremendously and did not have a very good year. But this season is walking a ton. I put out a stat like a month ago about he had already matched his walk total halfway through this year that he got all of last year. So taking a lot more pitches, being more patient at the plate. And, something I say on the broadcast all the time is that, when Cristian's on it, when he's lining balls to right center field, when he's going the opposite way. And he's done that a lot this year, especially in the second half, has really dialed it in. His hitting has really, really improved. But I think the fielding as well. I mean, he is all over the place over at short, making incredible plays. The glove is elite. I think he's an awesome fielder. It's just a matter of putting that bat together, and he's definitely done that so far this year. He's gone through a few rough slumps where he's striking out a little bit too much and maybe not getting the best contact, but he picks it right back up. He's still like top 5 in the league in hits so far this year. So, repeating single A was definitely a big deal for him and has helped him out a lot. And now it's just, when's that next promotion going to come to high A and, how he competes there.
He's still younger than league average this year. He's still 0.6 years younger than the average player in the Carolina League this year. But comparing his walk numbers last year to his walk numbers this year got me pulling up his baseball reference page. At this point, he is just about 25 plate appearances shy of how many plate appearances he got last year. Last year was 431. This year's 406. So he's not quite there, but he's almost there. And looking at some of the numbers, like his batting average is 40-ish points higher than it was last year. His OBP is almost 80 points higher than it was last year, which is crazy. He's slugging more than 100 points more than he was last year. He's hit double the amount of doubles, hit more home runs, hit more triples. Like you said, walked 20 times more than he did last year. The numbers are just significantly better than they were last year across the board. And it's been exciting. It's been fun to watch him. I think that there's not much, I don't think he'll spend, I said this before, but I don't think he'll spend much more time in Myrtle Beach. I think he's about ready. And I think he's proven that consistency throughout the year. It's not, at this point, it's not just like a flash in the pan. Like, oh, he looks better. Like now it's like he is a better player than he was last year for sure. And like, that's why he's ready for South Bend.
And he's stealing bases too. I mean, he's stealing bases at a much higher clip this year. He's playing confident. He's playing like he knows who he is, which has been fun to watch. But one thing I've learned in the 4 years that I've done this is, you might have a player that you think is ready for a promotion, but it's all about just, is a spot going to open up, right? Because there are guys that are ahead of him in the system, and it's just a matter of does he get that opportunity to go South Bend? So, I guess we'll see here in the coming weeks. But, much more improved, and he's definitely added a lot more muscle. His frame has gotten much more filled out this year, which has allowed better power and better contact. So he's been a great storyline to watch this year just to see the improvement and, seeing him get put back on the radar.
37 stolen bases for Cristian this year, which I believe still leads the system in all the Cubs system this year. So only 5 caught stealings too, which is that's a pretty crazy ratio. Let's go Cristian Hernandez to a third guy that's like getting a whole lot of love this year. I think we had briefly talked about this guy last time you came on. Alfonsin Rosario is one of my favorite prospects in this. I ranked him, I believe, 10th, 11th. I ranked him right around the top 10 of prospects in this system right now. And that's having not seen him a whole lot. I love Alfonsin Rosario and what he does on a baseball field, dude.
I'm right there with you. Every single time he takes the field, it's like you don't know what's going to happen. The ball just jumps off his bat. He's got so much, like I said with Cam Smith, He's got so much physicality. I mean, he's a big body with a lot of muscle and, has a ton of power. Now, he does have games where he strikes out way too much. For the season, that's not really been a huge problem. But like his contact has been getting better. He's still a really young guy, and the sky's the limit for him. And especially the way that he plays center field, he is all over that outfield. Has a tremendous arm. He's got so many tools that are just trying to be refined right now before he makes that next step. But such an electric player in the field. And, the bat's awesome. He's got the second most home runs on our team behind Andy Garriola. And as a young guy to come in and do that in your first year of professional baseball is really, really awesome. So, he's been one of my favorite players to watch. Just such a fun guy to see what he does, because you just never know from night to night what's going to happen with him.
I need to go back and check where he stands on the 20 years and younger leaderboard for home runs in Myrtle Beach Pelicans history, because I'm pretty sure he's climbing up that list from where I tweeted that out probably about a month ago. I'm pretty sure he's climbed up that list quite a bit since then. So, he's been – I'm curious about your perspective on Alfonsin Rosario from seeing Kevin Alcantara a few years ago, because I think that there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of differences in their game, obviously. It's not a one-for-one comparison, but like – the fact that they both kind of profile as right fielders, but right now they're good center fielders, right? Like Kevin Alcantara, we keep saying he's a right fielder, and Kevin Alcantara keeps playing Gold Glove caliber center field, and so like you keep kind of riding that out. Alfonsin Rosario, he's like your prototype right fielder in terms of like the big arm, the big power. Like when you're creating a player in MLB The Show to play right field, like he looks like Alfonsin Rosario, you know what I mean? But right now he's playing a good center field. He's got the power like Kevin Alcantara does. Like there's a lot of you look at those guys and there's a little bit of comparison there between the two.
I see it when, when the ball jumps off the bat, like with Alcantara, it was just like a certain way that it just went right into the sky. And I think it's the same thing with Rosario. I can't really put any stats behind that, but it's just a thing that you see. And, his swing is not super violent. Like it's very smooth and easy right through the zone, but he just puts so much contact on it and has so much power with that swing. But you're right. Like they're both project to be corner outfielders. I think that with Rosario, as he moves up to the system, if they keep him in center field, I think getting better route running and trying to get those balls that are a little tough to get is going to be his challenge, because there's been a few fly balls to center field that maybe if he took a better route, he would have been able to get. But the arm is really strong. He's a great outfielder, that's for sure. No matter where you put him.
Speed is good. The speed makes up for that in center field right now. Because he's fast enough. But if he continues to build out a little bit more, he'll get a little bit slower, and those routes become more important. So that'll be worth keeping an eye on for sure.
Yeah, and it was the same thing with Alcantara too. Like Alcantara has a lot of speed, but it's like he's got such a big frame, he's going to fill out. So what's going to happen then?
Yeah.
But no, two really exciting players that have taken over center field for us the past couple of years. And Rosario's great. He's a guy that, behind the scenes, learned English through Google Translate a few years ago, moved to America from the Dominican Republic at, I think, 16 years old. So he's still relatively new to the area, but fluent in English. You can have a conversation with the guy, super nice. And, it's definitely carries himself like a professional.
Dude, that's so amazing to me. I can't even comprehend how impressive that is that some of the guys from the Dominican or from Venezuela or wherever they're coming from that they are able to pick up English so quickly. I love the Pelicans do the graduation ceremony. I think that is maybe my favorite thing in the entire system every single year in terms of including off-field stuff or on-field stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a big emphasis that the Cubs system has, is to teach these guys English and just how to be able to operate in the United States, and unfortunately this year with the graduation, it got rained out, so we had to do it in the clubhouse, but still, it was a really cool moment. Yeah. And it's a big emphasis that the Cubs put on these guys to, help communicate with the other players, and even the American guys. Well, I think Frankie Scalzo, your guy, when he was here a few years ago, he picked up a good amount of Spanish from just hanging out in the bullpen and talking with those guys out there all game, and learned a few words, and now he knows a lot of it. So it's really cool to see how those guys communicate.
That's the real guys being dudes right there.
It is, no doubt about it.
All right, I mentioned Carter Trice earlier, and Carter Trice has had a very interesting season, right? When he came into this year, he was going through the catcher conversion program. He was learning how to get, as soon as he was drafted last year, he was worked on converting to be a better catcher. But there's a lot of rumblings about his bat, about his bat. He went to the Arizona Fall League last year, which was very strange. He was the only draft pick from last year's draft class that went to the Arizona Fall League. He came up and he started the year in Myrtle Beach, and he pretty much laid an egg during his first go around in Myrtle Beach. His first 17 games to start off this season in Myrtle Beach, he posted a 143 batting average, a 250 OBP, and a 302 slug. That's an OPS of 552. That's not good. That's bad. He was then sent back down to Arizona, presumably to work on some things at the plate. He came back up, and since he's come up, he's still there right now. Since he's come up in the 33 games since then, he's batting 261 with an OBP of 371 and a slug of 478. So that's an 849 OPS. He's gone from 552 to 849. It looks a lot like what we saw from Pedro Ramirez last year, right? That what Pedro did, where he struggled beginning of the year, went down to Arizona, came back up, and just rode that hot streak through the end of the year, did Pedro. So, like, I see a lot of comparisons between those two guys. Carter is now playing way more first base. He's first base and DH predominantly as the season's worn on. But, man, the bat's looking pretty damn good, dude.
Yeah, it's gotten much better. And sometimes those guys just need a reset, right? Like you get so hyped up for the season and it doesn't start out the way you wanted it to. And you don't want to keep getting worse, right? So to go back to Arizona, get a reset, learn some new things, fix that swing, and to come back the way that Carter has been tremendous. And his swing looks so much better. It's much more calm through the zone. He's not swinging at the kind of pitches he was in that first part of the year. And as far as the catcher thing, I'm not sure if they're still going to put him behind the plate or not. But like you said, he's been that first base DH kind of guy. But I think for Carter, I think the key now is just to, get on the field consistently, because he's battling with a few other guys for spots. Drew Bowser over at first base has played over there, as of late. So it's like, can Carter get on the field and, prove that he deserves that spot? But you're right. I mean, the bat's gotten a lot better. The power is starting to show a lot more. And, I've really become a fan of what Carter's been able to do this year.
Yeah, it's all of a sudden a really crowded position at first base in the Cubs system after this draft, right? You got Edgar Alvarez, who's now in the system. You got Cameron Cisneros, who's now in the system. Cole Mathis can play some first base. Cole Mathis can move over and play some third, where Cam Smith is there. Like, it's a crowded corner infield position now. And for Carter to be a first baseman in this organization, like, he will need to continue to hit this way. That OPS over 800, he's going to need to continue to do that. I think that he can at these lower levels of the system, but it's not just the first base position was a black hole in the Cubs system for quite a few years. And they got Matt Mervis. They drafted Hayden McGeary. Started filling that position a little bit more, and then they just went hard into it this year, like hard into it. And so he is going to have more competition, which may make him a better player, right? Having that competition may really drive him to be even better.
Yeah, you also got Anderson Suriel that's playing over there now with us at this level. He got here a few weeks ago. But, yeah, for Carter, it's all about, consistency, but also how do you differentiate yourself and how do you, rise above the rest? And I don't think Carter's going to be a guy that's a power first dude, because just the way that he's built, he does have a lot of power, but I don't think that's going to be his game in the future. So can he get on base more than others can? Can he walk? Can he battle at bats a lot better, which is something that he's done a lot better now in this stage of the season. So, yeah, it's all about how do you differentiate yourself and kind of rise above the rest, and, while continuing to work on that fielding and getting better at the first base position.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go. I got one more position player I want to hit on for sure. That's Leonel Espinoza. Leo Espinoza has been good. He just recently came back. He recently made his way back to Myrtle Beach this season. Sorry, I had it pulled up and I lost it here. This season in Myrtle Beach, Espinoza is batting. He's got a 301 average, an OBP of 386, and a slugging of 463. That's an 850 OPS for Leo Espinoza. And I know he's got a lot of fans. He's got a lot of fans in this in this fan base. Does Leo Espinoza? What have you liked from him so far this season?
One of those fans is me. I mean, he's really fun to watch. He is just a scrappy player, and I think he's just your typical leadoff guy that isn't going to be a power first dude, but gets on base, slaps the ball to left and right field, has some speed. which Leo does have. So just your typical leadoff guy that I think has really been a big key to the Pelicans turning it around now in the second half has been Espinoza's return to the lineup, being that consistent leadoff hitter and getting on base and coming in to score runs. So plays a really good outfield as well. But just a scrappy hitter that can spray the ball all over the field, is really versatile. He's an athlete. He's still really young and has a lot of stages to go, but I think has shown great discipline so far this year at the plate, and it's just is a contact first kind of player. And I think those are players that are really should be valued on this team. And I know Buddy Bailey loves watching Leonel Espinoza do his thing. So yeah, he's been awesome. I think he's been a big part of this turnaround.
They're different, but I see a little bit of Brad Beasley in Leo Espinoza. Like a little bit of the frame. I think Beasley's a little bit shorter than Espinoza, and Beasley started hitting for more power as he kind of climbed the ladder. So maybe we see that from Espinoza, right? Maybe like he's a contact oriented guy now, and he can kind of maintain that as he jumps up to South Bend, up to Tennessee. He maintains that like bat to ball ability while also slugging a little bit more. I think that'd be super exciting to see him generate that pop out of his bat to ball skills.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I talk about the discipline, but he's only struck out 28 times in 123 at bats, so he is like dialed in on this own. And maybe once that frame does fill out, I mean, he's listed at 6'0", 165 now. I don't know what it is currently because those don't get updated all that much. But once he does fill out a little bit, we could see that power also come around. But for what he is right now, he's been a really valuable player to this team.
How do those heights and weights get like logged? Like, how does that happen? Do you know like how that works?
I think it's when they first get signed and they take their height and weight, and I don't think it changes till they get to the majors. Now, I will tell you a funny story. A few weeks ago, I don't know what happened, but Alfonsin Rosario's height online was listed at 6'6".
Okay, yeah.
And he's a big guy, but he's not 6'6".
Yeah.
So I was on a mission to fix that. So I emailed the Cubs and I'm like, hey, like, do you guys have a certain number that he's at right now? And they were like, no, but you can email minor league baseball and put whatever you see fit in. So I was like, oh, it's in my hands now. So I go to Fonzie and I'm like, hey man, how tall would you say you are? Because I was betting 6'2".
Yeah.
He goes, 6'1". Like, all right. So from Fonzie himself, he's 6'1". I emailed minor league baseball, and now online, Alfonso Rosario is 6'1".
I'm looking at it right now. Alfonso Rosario, 6'1", 210. I got it right here on Baseball Reference. I don't know.
I didn't ask him the weight, so I don't know what the weight is. But he was. I don't know how he got to 6'6". Something must have gone wrong there.
Well, that's like so it's Brennan Davis. Brennan Davis was at one point listed at I think 6'5" somewhere. And then all of a sudden he got knocked down to 6 foot. And Brennan Davis is not 6 feet tall. Like he's not 6'5", 6'6", but like he's probably 6'3", 6'4". He's not 6 foot tall. And I think last year on the show we kind of speculated it had something to do with the automatic balls and strike system. Where like, hey, if you can get away with being 6 foot, then like it might help you in terms of drawing a few more walks in AAA. And then, just like it's stuck. I don't know what Brennan Davis is listed at on MILB and on Baseball Reference. But Brennan Davis was like all wonky. It was like he was listed somewhere one height, somewhere another height. I think that Moises Ballesteros is another good example of that. Where like Moises is listed as 5'7", and I'm not out here saying that Moises Ballesteros is tall. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think Moises Ballesteros is 5'7". I think he's probably like 5'9", like maybe he's probably about 5'9". But there's a big difference between 5'7" and 5'9" when you're like maybe a first baseman. You know what I mean?
That's the stuff that in our jobs, right, where you're not just the broadcaster, you're also the media relations guy. That's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night. Where I was like, no, Fonzie's not 6'6", man. I got to change this. And I kept getting questions about it. Like when Rich was in Myrtle Beach, he was telling, Fonzie's not 6'6". And I had a few people reach out, and I was like, we're getting to the bottom of this. We're gonna make this right, and we're just gonna go with it. So
that's incredible. Well, I'm curious to hear about what else you fix on the MILB website in terms of heights. I'm sure you got plenty more of those in your future.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's go. We've talked about the position players quite a bit. Let's go ahead and transition to there's one pitcher I specifically want to talk about today, and that's Yenrri Rojas, because he has been on an absolute bender on the mound. Like he has been killing it on the mound. Since July 1st, which I think since July 2nd was his first outing in July. He's thrown 23 and a third innings. He's thrown in 6 games. He's made 2 starts. Most importantly, he has a 0.77 ERA. He's got a whip of 0.77. Opponents are hitting something off of him. I lost that. But like, he is putting up just unbelievable numbers. Last outing was terrific from Yenrri Rojas. The past few outings has been really good. Last outing, he went 6 innings, I believe. 6 innings, 4 hits, 1 run, no walks, 2 strikeouts. You don't see a whole lot of pitchers going 6 innings down in Myrtle Beach.
No, especially at 20 years old, with where he's at. And I got the stat for you. He's opponents are hitting 232 off of him, and I think that's the main stat with him because he's not a big strikeout pitcher. I mean, he struck out 24 and 45 in a third innings. Like he's still working on that strikeout pitch, but his pitches have such great movement that the contact is so weak, and that's why he's been able to go deeper in games. And he's proved this year that he can excel both as a starting pitcher and a reliever because he's been doing kind of both. And sometimes it's 5-6 innings, sometimes it's 2-3 innings, and he excels at both of them. And I'm talking to Buddy tonight. Actually, he said that Yenrri's been our most improved pitcher so far this year, just by the way that he's grown on the mound and kind of honed into who he is. He's got a pretty wide arsenal for being 20 years old. He knows a lot of pitches, but he pitches with efficiency, and that's why he's able to go deeper in ball games. But that's one of the reasons I love watching him because, like you said it, Greg, at this level, not a lot of guys are going deep into ball games, especially when you're not striking a lot of guys out. And he's doing that. He's pitching the contact, and it's working for him. And I think he's been a big boost for this starting rotation.
Yeah, in that 6-inning start, he only threw 72 pitches there. The game before that, 2 innings, 24 pitches. The game before that, 3 1/3 and 46. Like he keeps the pitch count down. I'll point out a couple things to kind of keep an eye on with Yenrri Rojas. The batting average on balls in play is since July 1st is 194, which is like, I talked about this with you on a different pitcher back in May. I forget who it was, but 194, like that's not sustainable. Like the batting average on balls in play is going to go up, but I think that it's not like, I don't think it's all luck there. A lot of times you talk about BABIP and you're like, oh, like he's getting really lucky or he's getting really unlucky. I don't think it's like a 194 and it's all luck. Now, maybe the more realistic one is like 225, 230, 240, not 194. But like he generates weak contact. Like that's a part of the plan for him. You mentioned like he doesn't strike out a whole lot of guys. The swing strike rate for Yenrri Rojas is 14% since July 1st. Swing strike rate is 9%, which is like absurdly low. The looking strike rate is 14%. Like those are low numbers. But like I said, I think it works for him. Like he's gonna need to get more whiffs as he climbs the ladder, obviously. But like his whole like plan of attack is get ground balls, get weak contact, move on to the next inning. Like that's it.
Yeah, a lot of it is just honing in what you're good at. And I talk with our pitching coach George Stenopoulos about this all the time, and the fact that like, you got a wide arsenal, right? Let's focus on a few pitches and dial those in and make sure we're hitting our right spots, which is something that Yenrri does a lot. I mean, he does not walk a ton of guys at all, and just knows where to place different hitters, and that's why he's getting the weak contact. So, like you said, Greg, I think obviously as he moves up the ladder and guys, get better at seeing pitches, he'll have to adjust that and find a strikeout pitch. He doesn't throw with a ton of velocity right now. But hopefully those things come, and that's just the kind of pitcher he is right now, is a pitch to contact kind of pitcher on the mound, and it's working for him. And hopefully he can sustain that to finish strong this year.
All right, Sam. Now's your time to shine here. I always at the end, I'm always asking players who's the guy to keep an eye on. I'm always asking you broadcasters, like who am I missing? Like who's caught your eye over the past couple of months, over the past this entire season? Like who's caught your eye, whether it's a position player or a pitcher that we have not yet talked about today?
I think number one, and I can't recall if we talked about him in the first episode this year or not, but Juan Bello, I think is a guy that has been extremely impressive so far this year. He's started a ton for us so far this year. It's been 17 starts, 68 innings with 24 walks and 73 strikeouts as a 20-year-old pitcher. I mean, those stats are just absurd for being so young. And, he's got a strikeout pitch. His fastball has a ton of velocity. His curveball is, big 12-6, a lot of vertical movement. He's also been mixing in a slider as well and adding that to his repertoire this year. The improvement for him, he started off strong and he's still getting better.
Yeah.
He's gone through some rough outings and gone through some adversity, but he's bounced back. I think I mentioned it. I don't know if it was on this podcast or a different one, but like he is, mixing in some more advanced moves with the delayed pitching.
Oh yeah. Love it.
Holding his leg up a little bit, which I love to see, the creativity, which is really fun. But yeah, such a young pitcher that has been one of our best starters and has struck a ton of guys out, has a great demeanor on the mound. And, I think is definitely some guy that should get some recognition this year.
Yeah, I honestly with Bayo, I think that what's impressed me most is that he did get off to that hot start, and it kind of put everybody on watch, right? Like everybody's kind of like, oh, like Juan Bayo is like he might be something here, and then he went through that rough stretch that you mentioned, right? Basically, late May through the end of June or so is when he was really struggling, and then he bounced back, and that's what's impressed me the most. Like he bounced back for a young guy like him to bounce back in the past few outings have been really strong. Four innings, 1 run, 5 innings, no runs, and then he just went the 1 inning recently where he gave up 1 run. But his ability to battle back, his ability to come back and face that adversity and come back stronger on the other end is what's been most impressive to me.
And you can tell that his off-speed pitches still need, tweaking and refining every once in a while. But he's gotten really good at selection. Like he knows how to pitch a really good game efficiently. He's gone deeper into ball games as well. That 1 inning game was a weather game. So it was a delay halfway through, so he got pulled out. But yeah, it's just he pitches with a lot more maturity than what he is, 20 years old. Another one that I want to mention as well, Kenten Egbert is another starting pitcher for us that's also been a piggybacker as well. But I just love Kenten. I mean, such a good guy with just such a fun pitching style, obviously with the big leg kick, but creates a ton of deception with his delivery and the way that he hurls it to the mound. His velocity especially has been really ticking up this year. He's mid-90s after starting in the low 90s this year. So he's been doing a lot of work in the bullpen with our pitching staff and George Thanopoulos to get better at that. And, he's not going to blow you away, but like he knows how to pitch smartly and just battle through outings. And like I said with Bayo, like Egbert's a guy that started off strong, has had to go through some rough outings, but he's figured it out. And just an undrafted guy with a lot to prove. Like he told me a few weeks ago, sometimes like you come to this system, you're an undrafted free agent and you don't really know if you belong. And I think this year Kenton's proved that he belongs and definitely has a spot in this system.
Yeah, I completely agree. Can we talk about another guy that's actually no longer with you guys in Myrtle Beach? He got promoted up to South Bend, and that's Nico Zeglin, who we haven't really talked about him on this podcast at all. He was signed out of the Mexican League this year. He's 24 years old, so he's obviously older than most prospects are in Myrtle Beach, but he was absurdly good in Myrtle Beach. He's been terrific since he's been promoted up. Actually, he's been even better in South Bend since he's been promoted. I want to give some love to Nico Zeglin because while not a traditional prospect, I think that like you got to highlight these guys that are performing in the way that they are. And Nico Zeglin's that guy.
Yeah, I talk about it on the broadcast all the time when he was with us, but it's just mind-boggling to me how he was not drafted. Like he was a Big West pitcher of the year at Long Beach State last season. And even if you don't have the metrics, like I just don't know why nobody picked him up. And, the Cubs made a smart decision to take him out of the Mexican League this year. And I think the results have proved that. But, an electric fastball, a really good curveball, the changeup as well was really strong against single A hitters. So, he's older. He's 24 years old. But what he was able to do in Myrtle Beach from 3 different roles, a starter, a middle reliever, and a closer, he was dominant in all of them. Like he would just switch his mentality so quickly and be able to settle in on the mound. So, a big surprise this year, and his story is really fun. He's played baseball in so many different areas, Colorado, Myrtle Beach. We talk about Mexico. Now he's in South Bend. He loves the game. He's had a lot of success in this game, and was really excited for him once he got the call up because he definitely deserved it.
He was signed out of Tabasco in the Mexican League. Were there any jokes that you cracked on a broadcast about him being hot or even him bringing the sauce or something like that.
No, I should have. I should have. He pitched one game with Tabasco before he got the call to the Cubs organization. But I did say I think I did his last outing with us. I think I said getting Zeggy with it. So
Okay. There you go.
I was pretty proud I got that one in.
Yeah. you got to squeeze it in.
Yeah.
Any position players that have also caught your eye? I know. Well, actually, before we get into that, Naz Mule has been good. He's put up good numbers. He's not throwing any strikes. He does not throw strikes, but somehow he still produces good outings. What's been up with him so far this year?
I think he's so confident in who he is on the mound, and you can see that by the way he conducts himself in the clubhouse. Like, he's a confident guy, and I love that about him. And he goes out on the mound and just has a really strong mentality. And if he gets in trouble, he's still able to get out of it, And I don't think he ever thinks down on himself. Like, you look at his numbers, and the walk to strikeout isn't great, but his ERA is not that bad. So it's like he's getting in tough situations, but he's working his way out of it. And just has a really good mentality on the mound. I'm a really big fan of what he's been able to do this year. And, now the next step is like, all right, can we pitch more efficiently, use your pitches better to get deeper into ball games? Because he's not throwing all that long right now. But for this being your first year off Tommy John surgery and you're still trying to work and get that velocity back up, I think he's done really well this year.
I agree with that. I think that he's a ball of clay that they get to work with, and the development team can work him pretty hard over the next couple of years or so. Yeah. Position player side, anybody that's caught your eye?
Yeah, Cristian Olivo came to us at the very end of last year, and then this year had a really, really rough start, but a very solid month of May. Dipped off a bit in June. July, he got back to it. He's starting to show some power. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's a guy that plays all over the place in the infield, also plays the outfield as well, and it's just so quick. I mean, he's got so many tools as a fielder and covers so much ground. He's been playing more second base for us now with Cristian over at short, but just makes some incredible plays and also has a really strong bat that makes good contact, a lot of speed on the bases. So he's just one of those players that, I would describe quite a bit as electric, because you just never know what's going to happen with him. There's been so many baseballs hit up the middle that I think are for sure getting into center field, but he cuts them off, and sometimes he makes the throw to first, sometimes he doesn't, but he's still getting over there, and his effort is astounding.
Dude, I think he's pretty good in the outfield. Like, I think he's a utility player that's good at multiple positions. He's not playing all over the field because we can't find the spot for him. Like, he's playing all over the field because he's good. Like, he's played 30, like you said, 33 games at second base. He's logged 16 games in left field. He's logged 17 games at shortstop. He's got center field in there. He's got third base in there. He's playing all over, but like, he's good at all those positions. In addition to second, I think second base, he's really strong. I think left and shortstop, I think he's good. I think he's a good defensive player at those positions.
Yeah, and like I said with Trice when we were talking about him, like, that's how Olivo is differentiating himself, is being able to play all those positions at such a high level while also being really strong with the bat, because his month of July was really strong and, showed off a bit of the power as well. So, yeah, just a guy that's all over the place, and he's going to leave 110% on the field every single game. I mean, you're never going to question Cristian's effort. So, as the year goes on, as his progression goes, he keeps adding strength and adding speed. I think he's going to be really fun to watch climb through the system.
Jacob Wetzel has been the best hitter on the Myrtle Beach Pelicans this year, and it's not even really close. What's it been like watching Jacob Wetzel back to? I mean, he spent last year in South Bend in 2023. This is his third season having been played at Myrtle Beach. He's an older prospect, but like, the numbers he's putting up are downright insane.
Yeah, me and Wetzel have talked a lot this year, just being his third year in Myrtle Beach. And I think the success that he's getting this year has been really rewarding. And, he's worked so hard these past 4 years to have a year like this at the plate. He mentioned, back in 21, he was like an Energizer bunny where he just came in with just too much energy, and he wasn't playing very sound, and just wasn't very comfortable. 22 had the same problem. Then I went up in high A last year and struggled. But this year, like, he knows this level. He knows the Pelicans. He knows the fans. Like, he's comfortable, and he's playing like it. And he's just like, he's had so many jaw-dropping catches in the outfield, whether it's in right, whether it's in center. And he gets that from being a competitor. Like Buddy Bailey calls him a gamer all the time because that's who he is. Like he's going to leave it on the field every single game. I've never seen in my 4 years a player have more effort than Jacob Wetzel does in the outfield because he does his best to not let any ball touch the ground. And because of that, like we've seen him on SportsCenter top 10 a couple of times with some of the catches that he's made. And, now has turned into a really selective hitter. He's walked a ton this year and, has been swinging at good pitches. So he's also been a catalyst in the middle of this lineup for the success and the turnaround that we've had has been Wetzel, being the leader that he is and continuing to get on base, providing that power as well. He's been a big player for us this year.
How on earth does he have 11 triples in 79 games? That's an insane number.
It's wild. It is. I think he leads all of single A in triples. But he's a fast guy. Like he just gets around the bases really quickly. So if there's a ball down the right field line, you could bet he's going 3. He's just such a fun player. Like he plays with, like I said, a ton of effort and makes his way around the bases really fast. So just an all-around player here in single A. And, now obviously you hope that success can continue up at the high A level whenever he gets back there. But I'm really happy for Jacob and, the success he's been able to have this year. I met his parents a few weeks ago and got to talk to them, and they're, really excited for what he's been able to do this year. But I could not be happier for Jacob and what's going on with him.
What's Miguel Pabon meant to that ball club this year?
A lot, and not having him for that first month was kind of tough because he's just been, I've talked about it so many times, but he's just such a leader. Like at batting practice, he's always cracking jokes with the guy and he's talking to every single player and he's, helping the Spanish guys communicate with the English guys. And, he's just such a strong mental player. And now like we're starting to see it on the field. Like as a catcher, he's gotten really strong behind the plate. His throws to second are great. He's caught, the past 2 weeks, he's caught like, I want to say 7 or 8 guys trying to steal. And then now with the bat as well, like we're starting to see that bat come around. So the on-field success is starting to show up along with what he's able to do in the clubhouse. So, Pabon has been great to have this season as he was last year. But this year, like he's more comfortable in who he is. He's more comfortable with the pitching staff. Like he knows all them a lot better now. He knows how to talk to him when he goes out for a mound visit. He's been crucial. There's no doubt about it.
Since July 1st, he's got a 380 on base percentage. Not hitting for a whole lot of power, not hitting for a whole lot of average, but a 380 OBP is pretty impressive for a guy who's really, he's a defensive first. He's a leader of a catcher, not necessarily like you're not looking for Miguel Pabon to go out there and hit you 20 home runs. Like that's not part of his game. But if he can go out there and post a 380 OBP, like that's just icing on the cake. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, we'll take that. And especially the year he had last year where he struck out a ton. But the patience I've been able to see him gain the past few weeks has been really, really cool. He just hasn't really had this kind of comfortability in the box that we're starting to see him have. So now that he's doing that, has also been big. So yeah, he's really coming into his own.
All right, brother. I will let you go here. Before we let you go, though, I want to give you the chance to promote how can we listen to you this week, assuming that the Myrtle Beach Pelicans play the Down East Wood Ducks. How can we listen? How can we tune in and hear what you have to say?
Yeah, hopefully we get as many games in as we can. But, we'll be on myrtlebeachpelicans.com, and there's going to be a tab on the top. Let me just walk you through it right now because I need to refresh myself. myrtlebeachpelicans.com. There's a tab on the top that says team. You go to team, and then it says stream live. You hit stream live, and then there's going to be the link to the radio broadcast under that. So
Perfect.
That's how you can listen to all the games. I'll also, like I said before, I'll try and be streaming on Facebook Live as well, as much as I can, because I have a feeling we might see a good amount of debuts this week. So hopefully get some video footage of that. But, yeah, we are boots on the ground. Hopefully the raindrops stay away, and we get to play some baseball here, especially with the run the Pelicans have been on. Hopefully get a few more wins.
Before we wrap up, I meant to say this before I pass it off to you. I want to give a shout out to Bryce Windham, who actually just retired from baseball this past week. I know that Bryce, of all the players we've talked about on the show, is in the maybe in the Mount Rushmore of guys we've talked about the most, especially considering the fact that he's not really he was never really a top 30 prospect in this organization. So I want to give a shout out to Bryce Windham, who decided to hang up the cleats this past week. One of the best guys I've covered in this organization during my 10 years or so covering this farm system. He's been one of my favorites to cover, whether it's on this show, having him on the show a couple different times, having him on the previous version of this podcast, being able to talk with him at the field. I just chatted with him last week when I was over in Des Moines, had some conversation with him. So I want to give a shout out to Bryce Windham. Best of luck to what he's doing next in his career, because he deserves all the best coming his way. So shout out to him. I couldn't leave this episode without acknowledging the fact that he retired, because if not, you guys would have been out there listening and being like, why is Greg not talking about Bryce Windham every single week anymore? Well, that's the reason why. So wanted to give a shout out to him. Sam, I appreciate you coming on the show. Always appreciate you coming on the show. Always a blast. For those of you guys out there listening, we're back on our normal Tuesday release schedule. I know we got kind of crazy there for a few weeks with the draft and then the trade deadline and all that good stuff. So we are, as of right now, back on Tuesday mornings like we used to be. You can find us on the Northside Bound YouTube channel. You can find us on anywhere where you listen to podcasts. You can find Sam on Twitter. You can find me on Twitter. You can find the podcast on Instagram, all that good stuff. Can't thank you guys enough for tuning in, and we'll be back in your ears in one short week. Thanks, guys.